the last time we had connected, Leslie, was at IDA, and the documentary panel that was held in Los Angeles, I think, yeah, just a few months ago before all of this started to happen. And there was a lot of excitement. I think a lot of people were looking forward to seeing the Imagineering Story on Disney Plus, because it had not, I don't think it had released yet either.
Right.
But now that, you know, a lot of that has changed, and that there, you know, certainly Disney Plus and all the episodes have debuted, and now the episodes are going into different countries now. What has been the most interesting reactions that you've heard online and from people in regards to what they think about this project that took you so long to do?
I think the gift for us has been that, you know, we worked in silo for years on this project, and we never showed it to anybody on the outside except for some of the key Imagineers, the head of Imagineering. And, you know, we got a lot of good notes, and, you know, we kept iterating, but overall, from a 90-minute film conception to 6 hours was, you know, I have to remind everybody that this was originally commissioned as a 90-minute film, and it was done over 5 years. And then by the end, say the 4th year, we started editing, and, you know, we realized we had so much material that it was just going to be tough to try to get it down to 90, and that we would, you know, go to Disney and say, would you consider doing a series and putting a little bit more into it? And that, I think, was just the best opportunity for us, because we had so much material. And then, you know, able to get it on Disney Plus for launch was perfect synergy and time and opportunity. But I think since then, you know, to see the reaction from fans around the world who love the Imagineers and love Disneyland and the parks and Disney history, it's been really fun to see the reaction. And again, you know, we're all in our offices watching footage, and, you know, we're fans just as much as everybody else. And so we'd be getting in this footage, and we'd be like Christmas morning, you know, we'd get like, you know, a drive full of stuff from WDI, and we're looking at it, we're like, oh my God, no one's ever seen this before. And, you know, just really neat stuff. And so we were really excited to show this to the fans. Of course, you never know as a filmmaker whether people are going to like what you do. You just you kind of create something based on what you like. And so we had seen, I mean, I watched those 6 episodes ad nauseum, time and time again, looking at every little nuance and every little frame and color correction to audio, to graphics, to titles, to, you know, there's so much that goes into these documentaries, and, you know, and transferring the material and getting it right and getting it the highest quality you can. And so, you know, when we were watching it towards the end, and we were online and watching down the final color and audio combined to the audio mix we did up at Skywalker, I was finally able to sit back and watch it almost like a guest would, not looking at it from critical, because we had locked it at that point. And so now there's no more changes you can make except visual color, right? And I just started to really feel the emotion of it. And, you know, I'm finding myself tearing up, you know, when I was watching it. And I knew that when we'd screen it in editing, but I always base my own emotions and when I can laugh and I can tear up and feel the heart of it, that's when I hope that I'm reflecting, or I'm sort of embodying what the audience would feel. And so that was nice to see the reaction to, like, the end of episode 1 when Walt passed away, you know, and the reaction to that was, you know, everybody's like, oh my God, I'm crying. I had no idea it was going to be so heavy duty at the end. And, you know, even the end of episode 2, and, you know, Bob Greer going inside the Matterhorn, you know, I loved hearing all the reactions to these scenes that we did.
Yeah, no, I think that's cool that you get to enjoy it for what it is, you know. And I think for a lot of people who enjoyed it for what it is, I think a lot of people also understood it to be something much broader than Imagineering. Like, at the end of the day, like, this was almost like a retrospective on a rather large part of the Disney company's history. I mean, was that always something that you wanted to include there too? Because yeah, I feel like as much as it's called the Imagineering Story, I feel like it's also, you know, the Walt Disney Company story as well in a lot of ways.
Yeah, we, you know, I think it was going to be tough to tell the Imagineering story without, you know, the whole ecosystem around it. And you needed to know, so it soon came over us. And I mean, it's something that I look at in any film, which is how is your main subject affected by the world around them? And what is going to be what are going to be the conflicts, and what are going to be the turning points that they are affected by? And it's very basic storytelling, really. You know, whether you're writing narrative or your documentary, you're always looking at the 3-act structures and the ups and downs and the what does that character go through? And so for us, we had multiple characters. We had all the Imagineers, right? And so they were impacted by the regimes above them, whether it be Walt, Roy, Eisner, or Iger. And so they had to be part of that. And then the other larger ecosystem around that is what happens in the world that's impacting artists in these parks and their artwork and what they're creating. And so whether it be tsunamis or, and currently now with, you know, COVID, it's like, okay, every single park is shut down. So, you know, you can't not talk about the larger ecosystem, whether it be business or finance or physical manifestations in the world, because these, at the end of the day, this is a human story.
Yeah, that's really interesting to also pick up on. And I do want to end our conversation in just a second with, or later on, with talking about the parks and obviously what's been going on with the coronavirus, because I think certainly there's a lot that's been shaken there. I know you're not speaking on behalf of the company, but as a filmmaker, for sure would love to talk about one part of the story that got me super emotional, and how that maybe applies there. But I do want to talk about too, before that, the main tension that came, I think, through the episodes, and that's I'd argue that would be the idea between creating art and also, you know, the resources that are needed to create that art. In your mind, do you think Imagineering is I know it's a business unit within the company, but do you feel like that's the segment itself is more of like an artistic studio, or acts like an artistic studio more than it does a place that's meant to create themed entertainment in a lot of ways?
I think that their driving force is to create themed entertainment. You know, that's the main objective. Obviously, that's what they do. But at the end of the day, as you see in the series, it's the constant pendulum swing between art and finance and economics, and how does that conflict affect them? And so you saw, you know, after Paris Disneyland or Euro Disneyland, how that shifted the economics within the parks, and how Eisner had to hold back, you know, on some of that financing, and you see what that ultimately looks like. And so I think that what you learn, that, you know, as hard as it is, that it was, Walt Disney said, you know, it's all about quality wins out, right? And I think at the end of the series, you see Iger doing the same thing, that quality wins out. But yet at the same time, it's not black and white. I know Eisner felt quality wins out too, but, you know, he also has to they all have to be responsible, you know, economically and financially to the company. And that's the interesting part about this whole story, is you look at Walt and Roy, and Roy was always the finance guy, and he and Walt always had this, you know, tension. It's like, I'm going to run down this way as Walt. And then Roy's like, no, you're not, you know, and he's reeling him back in. And it's just from as an artist, as a filmmaker, you know, I understand the artistic side of things, and I understand that you're often beholden to whatever amount of money you have to create that art. You know, if it's something that you're building or whatever. I mean, a paintbrush and a canvas is slightly different, but everything has value, right? Even a painting obviously has value. You determine what that value is, and so I think it's the same with these parks. What is the value of that land, you know, or Cars Land, or that park itself? You know, are we giving it enough of the financial means to make it as good as it can be? And, or are we going too far? Are we spending too much? Are we going into too much detail? You know, so it's constantly, you know, a fine line between how much you're putting in versus how much you're going to get in return, and how long you will get that return, you know?
Right, right. Yeah, I think it's a time old question that even Imagineering can't escape, to try to find that balance between art and resources, and how that ultimately, yeah, like you said, has to be responsible in a lot of ways in order for them to continue to do the work that they feel like they're called to do. So, was two more questions for you. Was there any moment, I know you've been through a lot of these interviews already, and it's unique that we're talking about it even, you know, so many months later, but do you have a story that you had not shared about the production of what it was like to work through and make the series?
It's hard to say. I mean, we were on this thing for so many years, right? And you know, every day you didn't necessarily know where it would be seen, or what was going to happen to it, or would people like it, would people not. I think just like what the Imagineers do, we do as filmmakers, is we create something and then hope people like it. And so I think there was a lot of, you know, positive reinforcement from Disney, and there was also the uncertainty of, well, where will it air, and will it air, and you never know that, right? But you know, I think, you know, we went through so many different storylines that some of them didn't get on camera, you know. And there's a lot of things that I'd like to put back in when we get the opportunity on the next series.
Yeah. Oh, so you will be doing another version of this,
I mean, I know,
in the future.
yeah, I can't say anything yet, but you know, I know everybody wants to, and it's just, we're kind of clouded in this, you know, we're all in like a standstill because of the COVID.
What's going on?
Otherwise, we would be filming right now in the parks. But yeah, I don't know. I can't really. I mean, if you ask me specifics, I could do it, but it's hard for me to come up with some one thing.
I guess. Yeah, maybe like, you know, I think always the interesting stories that get to me are just like the moments of serendipity. Like, was there a moment while you were shooting, or talking to an individual, or as planned shoots, and maybe the weather would just happen to be perfect on one shot? Like, what were those moments that solidified in your head that happened out of nowhere, that weren't expected, but made the project even more special, and affirmed to you guys that this was the thing to do?
Well, I think one of the benefits with Disney Plus coming in towards the end was that, you know, they said, well, what would you like to do in this series that you haven't been able to do thus far? Because we were on a 5-year budget with WDI, and then when Disney Plus came in, they looked at it and said, okay, well, what would you like to do differently? And they had their suggestions as well. And one of the things that we collectively agreed on was we wanted a little bit more character development, and give each episode a few more some focus on a few more individuals. And so one of them was Bob Gurr in episode 1. And I thought it'd be great, you know, and then they said, well, what else would you want to do that you haven't been able to do yet? And I said, well, we've really only done interviews and covered, you know, various, you know, attraction openings and things like that, but I'd like to get more verite and take audiences into behind the scenes in a way that they would never get to do, and demythicize some of these things that have been myths over time. And so I said, it'd be great to take Bob Gurr into the Matterhorn, and let's have him throw hoops in the basketball court. And and so, you know, that had to go through a few approvals, and then, you know, and I was hoping that it would happen. And then Bob's like, sure, I'll do it. You know, and I've known Bob so long, and he's like a friend, you know, he's a friend. So I'm like, Bob, you want to go shoot hoops in the Matterhorn? And he goes, sure. You know, he's so cool, and it was so easy. And so shooting that scene was really fun, because first of all, he's like a rock star at Disneyland. Everyone, so I'm like, okay, Bob, you know, stop taking photos with everybody. We got to get in here, you know, let's film. But then going inside, you know, Bob also understands filmmaking, and he's just so easy to work with. And so we were able to go in there, and then I didn't know that Bob threw underhand. That was adorable. I mean, I just thought that's so awesome. And then just having fun in that moment with him was something I'll never forget. And then afterwards, somebody said, you guys should sign the basketball. And so he and I both signed the basketball. And
Nice. And it's still there in the Matterhorn?
we left it up there for quite a while. And finally I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't mind having that and putting it in. The Disney team, they actually put it in a glass case.
Oh, nice.
They have it down at Disneyland for me to pick up anytime I want. But now that everything's closed, I won't get it for a while. But that's sweet. I think none of us wanted somebody to like steal it and then auction it off or something. We just thought somebody should keep it and hold on to make sure it's protected. Not that anybody would do that, but we just thought, and maybe someday it'll go back into the Matterhorn if they care to. You know what I mean? They have a glass case in there with like really cool memorabilia.
Oh, nice.
Up in there with next to the basketball court. So maybe it'll go up there someday.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that was really special. I think when people saw that shot, it really demystified that there was some basketball equipment up there to be able to finally quell all those I guess fears that was a lie. So for giving us that. Yeah.
The other weird thing, on that same exact day, we were backstage having lunch with the crew, and there was a guy there and whose name I'm forgetting, but he was so sweet, and he was one of the guys that climbed the Matterhorn back in the day.
Oh, wow.
And
very cool.
He was telling me the stories about he and his colleague would climb the rope up the Matterhorn.
Yep.
And they would wait inside there for hours and then have to climb back down, and that was his job as a cast member.
Wow. Yeah.
Could be somebody to interview someday.
Yeah, I miss those for sure. I remember they brought it back a few years back for some anniversary, and they did it during midday thing entertainment, and that was really cool to kind of see that, and actually to see people on a mountain that's scaled to look like it's taller than it should be. So to see people on it was also a first perspective kind of illusion that was quite interesting to see as well. Final question before we go. You'd mentioned like the longings to go back to the park and to shoot and to pick up that basketball. Was in regards to this outbreak. It was interesting. I think this was before the actual safer at home order was put in place here in California. But I remember watching the clip, or I remember remembering the clip of the gentleman who was an Imagineer at Tokyo Disney Sea or Disneyland. I think it was the second to last episode. And he mentioned that, the park was open during the earthquake and then the following tsunami that happened afterward in Japan. And he was telling us that the park had to shut down, but then he pivoted, and then he said that in order for the country to heal, that the park needed to open back up. And I couldn't help but think, certainly it's not it's not to that magnitude, I would say, or maybe it is to a lot of people, but the fact that the parks are now closed and people can't go there, and seeing obviously the reaction that people have had online to its closure, it's almost, I think an LA Times story said that, hope and inspiration have kind of disappeared for a moment. And I'm wondering, person who's been surrounded by that on that deep level, how do you feel about that? Like with not just Disneyland closed, but that every Disney park around the globe is closed. Do you think in order for us to kind of really heal through this, do you think that Disneyland and the parks need to kind of come back? And what does that say about our human condition? I'm sorry to get super philosophical, but I feel like there's such a tangible connection to what the Imagineer was saying about having these places open for us to heal.
Yeah, I totally agree with the fact that these parks are a barometer of how we as humans come together and want to experience happiness. And the fact that they are closed, I think that there's a I mean, think about how many people go to Disney parks around the world on a daily basis, and that is not happening right now. And I think, you know, what do they say? Distance makes the heart grow fonder. I think
Hmm.
there's a lot of people that are talking about how they miss going to these parks, and I've been getting a lot of feedback from people saying, you know, thanks for your series because it's allowing us at least to get, you know, a taste of the parks again and feel a connection to them in a way that we hadn't before because we're learning the behind the scenes, and so we have an even greater appreciation for them now. And so I think that's what's cool. And I was recently on the Disney ship, the last cruise, the Disney Wonder, when it was out at sea before it came into San Diego when coronavirus hit. And so we could not dock at very many. I think we docked at 2 ports, and that was it. And that was
Mm.
at Panama Canal. But as we were watching, it was very surreal because I say now that we were on the last happiest place on earth. Thankfully, you know, nobody got it to my knowledge on the ship, but you know, the thing was the cast members were so attentive to the guests, and they went into overdrive on keeping that ship clean and desanitizing everything ahead of you and behind you. And the
Mm.
entertainment on that ship went into overdrive. I was the guest presenter at one of them, and you know, we all stepped up to provide more entertainment, more talks, whatever we could do to keep everybody happy and entertained. But you know, I think from what I've heard from people that I've met on the ship, they were just so blown away by how great the cast were. And people would come to me, they saw 6 episodes on the ship. We were only going to show 1, and we showed some of my other films, but as we needed more content, we showed all 6. And it seemed like more and more people were going to see this series as the ship went on, because
Mm.
it was in a sense cathartic, and some people came up teary-eyed and saying, you know, thank you for this, because we were going to go to Disneyland when we landed in San Diego, and now we can't. And it just makes us that much more appreciative of these parks and who created them, you know. And so there was a real genuine sense of appreciation for what the Imagineers do, and for Imagineering as an entity, for these parks. And I think that when Walt Disney coined it, that he's going to create the happiest place on earth, you know, you think about that, that's a high bar, right?
Mm.
That's a high bar to say that anywhere around the world. And I love it, actually. I think that's awesome to be able to say that that's what I am going to create in the world. But I honestly felt through the whole process of the Imagineering Story, and having made it, having put it out into the world, and now on that last floating park, when everything else is shut down, it was really surreal. It was like I had this weird closure in a way.
Mm.
You know, as we landed, we went the night before, we were all, you know, in Tiana's, you know, dancing with jazz band, and, you know, I mean, it was like you would never know anything in the world was happening, and yet
Mm.
you step off the next day and it's complete desolation in San Diego.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
I'm reflecting back on that time, and as much as we were all obviously concerned about what was life going to be like, and how was the stock market, and, you know, we're seeing everything happen.
Yeah.
We're off, you know, sitting by the pool. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
There's a sense of complete guilt, but like, what else are we going to do? You know?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
we all really appreciated every single day on that ship.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing that. I think that, to your point, I think there's certainly when someone creates something like that with intention of bringing happiness to people, that's felt, you know, and that spans time. And I'm just reminding myself about, you know, just the opening day, you know, dedication that you played at the end of the episode in series 2, right? Or at the beginning, or one of the episodes. But I mean, everybody knows Walt Disney's opening day speech almost by heart. But you know, I think one day, or even to this day, even as the parks are closed, arguably it's still a place of joy and inspiration for all the world. And so, as much as we certainly want to go back to that place, it's interesting to see now that no matter what the situation is with this virus, that Disneyland still stands as that Disneyland and by extension all the Disney parks and even the cruise ships and resorts still stand as a beacon of hope and light to people around the globe. So Thank you so much for sharing all that with me, and sharing the story and the years of work that it took to be able to document all that. It certainly means a lot.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to meet you, and thanks for sharing the stories.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Leslie, thank you so much again.
Stay safe. Thanks.
Take care. You too. Bye.
All right. Bye.